Hi everybody, welcome back to Our Home and Our Kitchen. We are so excited to have you here today. We really hope you enjoyed last week's recipes. We'd love to hear your feedback on them, see your photos, and let us know how you made them your own. But today is super exciting. It's gonna be really fun. Today is Pasta Sunday at our house, which as a kid for me was always my favorite day of the week. We would be at my grandma's house in the basement cooking with my aunts, and then we'd have a big pasta meal, and then all of us cousins would go outside and play games after dinner. So here we are for Pasta Sunday. Today we're making our family's gravy, ravioli, so let's get cooking. Us Italians have a big debate over whether it's called gravy or sauce. Our family calls it gravy because we make a deep red gravy and we use meat as a base. So today we're actually using short ribs in our gravy as well as mild Italian sausage. You can add hot Italian sausage, but we only had mild in the house, so that's what I'm using today. Then once we put the tomatoes in, we're gonna add parsley, carrot, celery, onion, garlic, a little bit of oregano, and some bay leaf to it. Let's make our gravy, shall we? So, as we do this, you're gonna turn your stove on, obviously, because you need that on to cook. I'm doing a medium high, and I'm just gonna add some olive oil into the pot. And then I'm gonna smash up some garlic, and this is a great trick if you just wanna smash garlic quickly. And it just peels right off, usually. There we go. And we can just throw that in there. And then I'm just gonna let that sizzle a little bit. I'm gonna salt and pepper my short ribs. This is a great thing to start super early in the morning because the longer it simmers and cooks, the better it is. I'm just gonna add our meat in here. I don't know why I always start with the short ribs for some reason on the bottom. Then we're gonna add our sausage in. And if you have meatballs, you can add those in. I might throw some meatballs I made earlier in here later on, but I don't know, maybe not. It might just be a sausage and rib gravy today. And I'm gonna add in this onion I chopped up earlier. Toss that in there. And a little bit of red wine. A little bit. Oh, this smells so good with the onion, the red wine, and the sausage in there. We're gonna put the lid on this. We're gonna let this simmer for about 10 minutes until it's browned, and then we're gonna come back and drain the grease from it, and we'll make the rest of it. Now that our meat's been simmering for about 10 minutes or so, you can see how nice and brown it is. It smells so good. And what I'm gonna do today is, sometimes I do this because I don't want this gravy to get too greasy. I'm actually gonna remove the Italian sausage and I'm gonna cook it in the oven on 350 for probably about 20-30 minutes, just depending until it's pretty much well cooked. And then I'll put it back in the gravy a little bit later on. So I'm taking all these guys out of here. And we're just gonna put those in this glass dish. And I'll add a little bit of red wine to the glass dish. Everything tastes better with red wine, I think. Then I'm gonna cover this up with some foil. And I'm gonna put this in a 350-degree oven. And I just kind of keep an eye on it until I kind of want to move it back into the gravy. But right now it's gonna go in the oven for about 20 to 30 minutes or so. Now that our sausages are in the oven, we are gonna take the rest of this and strain it over here before I put it back in the pot. Just grab these guys real quick. So, just gonna strain the grease out of here. I don't like it to get too greasy, so I try to keep as little as possible, but you want the flavors of the meat, so it's kind of this double-edged sword, if you will. And then I'm actually just gonna dump this out, which is not great for this sink, but that's okay. And I'm gonna get those bits of onions out as well. Then I'm gonna take these guys, put them back in the pot. It smells so good. Wish I could just eat these right now. I love that flavor and that smell of red wine and meat together. It's just a great flavor. So we're gonna put this back on the stove. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add in our Italian tomato sauce. You can use a flavored one. You could use any style you want. Usually I get the bigger cans, but they didn't have them, so I'm stuck with the little guys today. my oregano. Just dump that whole thing in, why not? Then I'm gonna add my parsley, carrots, and what the carrot does is it cuts the acidity out of the tomatoes, so it gives it a little bit of sweetness to it, so it's not so tart. And then I add some celery in there, and then I'm also gonna cut this onion up, and you can actually just add the whole onion in. You don't need to add dice it or anything like that because it's coming out later anyway. So we're gonna toss that guy in there, and then I'm just gonna mix this bad boy up for a couple minutes. Push everything down. And what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna crank it up a little bit on a higher heat. We're gonna let this bubble pretty hard for about 20 minutes, continually stirring it. And then we'll put it to a low simmer for the rest of the day and let it cook for 4, 5, 6 hours, however long you can. So we'll be back soon with more. So we're just gonna take the sausage out of the oven now and put it back into the gravy. Sorry. And kind of get that, help those flavors get into the sauce here. So we're just gonna toss these guys in here. And they're gonna get really nice and soft as they cook down in here. But you can see all that extra grease in there. So I didn't want all that in this because it does make it a little bit more greasy. There we go. And you can use as many sausages as you want. I used 8 today because we like a lot of sausage. Funny. So just give that a stir, and I'm gonna let that keep bubbling, and you can see how nice and deep red that's coming. We're just gonna let that cook for a couple more hours. So our gravy's been simmering for several hours now, and you can see the beautiful color that it has in it with our sausage in there. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna strain some of it out for tonight's ravioli dinner into this pot here and just let it simmer the rest of the day because we'll still keep getting some great flavors. And then I'm gonna pack the rest up and freeze it. So to do that, I usually just have a strainer on hand, and I have a pot or a bowl depending on what I'm going to strain it into. And I just start to do this. And you squish it around, and you can see the juice come out. The gravy part. But what you don't get is the chunky stuff that you don't want. And we're just going to continue doing that until I fill it. And I know this is something we've always done, not everybody does this, but you don't want like pieces of parsley and random onion in your beautiful tomato gravy. So we try to get rid of those things. You're gonna wanna have a dump bowl nearby to toss those things into. Now you can kind of see why I use 10 cans of the sauce, the tomato sauce, because you do end up, getting rid of some of it when you do this process. And then what I let this do is I let this simmer until I'm ready to eat tonight, and it turns out just delicious. It gets the best flavors in there. And I do this before I freeze it as well, so what I'll do with the rest of this is freeze it in the containers this way, and then when I'm ready to use it again, I just take it out, defrost it, put it on the stove in a pot, and cook it. And then you can add your meatballs and your sausage in as well, or you can freeze it with your meatballs and your sausage, which is what I'm going to do since we're not having those this evening. When I was a kid and we were making ravioli in my grandma's basement, I think one of our highlights was always we would take a shot of anise set before we would start our dough. So, salute Grandma, we miss you and love you very much. Ooh, let's get started on the dough. Yeah, that makes a good dough. So, here we have 6 cups of sifted flour. We always sift the flour, and then I'm actually gonna take my ring off so I don't get all doughy in there. Then we're going to make a well in our dough. So I actually make a cross usually. The thing about dough is you really need to just be able to feel it. So you might have to change your recipe depending on your location. This is actually a blend of my grandma's recipe and one of her good friend's recipes. So it's kind of funny that I use both. We're going to add a little bit of the milk in. This is 1/4 of a cup of milk I'm adding in. And again, you just kind of start to sift it in.
Now give me the beat.
And then we're also gonna add in 1 stick of melted butter, a little bit cooled. I'm just gonna sift that in. And start to just kind of mix it up, and your hands are gonna get sticky, but you know, that's part of the fun when you're making dough. Now we're gonna add 3 eggs, 1 at a time, and then I work each egg in. It's just it's a messy dish to make, but it's really fun. And if you have kids, this is a great activity while you're in quarantine. You can make pizzas, you can make pastas, you can make all kinds of things. Now that I'm a little bit more, we're gonna dump this out here and try to form a ball. So now that I've got that mostly in a ball and a mess all over the place, it's okay. It's homemade, that's what it's about. I'm gonna take this off my hands. I'm gonna wrap this in saran wrap, and then I'm going to put it back in here for a few minutes so we can get rid of that stuff. We're gonna let it sit and rest for about 30 minutes. I'm gonna put a damp cloth over it and a towel, and I'm gonna stick it back in the corner, and then while we're doing that, we're actually gonna make our stuffing. Now we're gonna make our filling for our ravioli, and today I'm doing a ricotta filling. Usually we put some meat in our ricotta filling, but I'm delivering some over to my neighbor's house and she's a vegetarian, so we're actually just sticking with the cheese today. So last night I actually drained the ricotta so that it would be too wet when it's going into the sauce today. So you can see this has been sitting overnight. You definitely want to drain it overnight because it just gives you a much better mixture. And you can see all the liquid that came out of it overnight, so that's a decent amount. And I forgot to get a bowl, so let me grab one real quick. Now you can see in our cabinets too. They're pretty organized. So now with this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just take the drained ricotta, dump it in a large mixing bowl, and set that out of the way. Kind of break this up a bit. Now the cool thing about ravioli is you can really make any filling you want. So my family's always done a cheese filling, a little bit of veal in it, and then a spinach and meat filling. If you're a vegetarian, you can just do the cheese like we're gonna do today. You can also do butternut squash, pumpkin in the fall, really anything you want. So I love raviolis because you can kind of make them your own thing. Now we do add a little bit of anise into our ricotta. That's what gives it such a great flavor. About a half a shot, you don't need any more than that. And add some pepper. I like a lot of pepper. I think it gives it really good flavor. A little bit of salt. Sorry, Mark. Not too much. 1 egg. Again, see, like I got shell in there, so we definitely don't want that in our food. Bye-bye. We're gonna put that in there, and then I'm gonna mix this up like this. And the egg just helps bind the ricotta together. It gives it a little bit of a texture when it's going into your ravioli. Now we're gonna add some cinnamon, and not a lot of cinnamon, but just a little bit, like about, I don't know, maybe a half a teaspoon or so. And then we're gonna chop up some parsley. So I have some Italian parsley here. We're gonna cut this up. Now the cool thing too about this is if you don't want to make your gravy, your ravioli, your pastas all in one day, you don't need to. You can actually make the gravy and it'll last 3 to 6 months in the freezer. You can freeze it with the sausage, the meatballs and everything, which is what I do a lot of times. And then I just pull it out when I want to use it. And sometimes it's even better the second time around, I find, than it is the first day that you make it. So we're just going to put that all in there. And mix that up. That's looking good. You can see the nice color that that gets. And I'm just going to grab a teaspoon real quick so I can taste it and see how it's doing. So I just keep actually spoons on hand. I always forget that in my kitchen so that you can taste food when you're making it for people. Now, so that needs more pepper. And another little dash of cinnamon. And I'm gonna add a dash of sugar to it just because I like it a little bit sweeter. Okay, now this is just gonna sit, and I'm gonna try it with a clean spoon to make sure I like it. I don't know, I feel like it needs the sugar sometimes, but my grandma's recipe doesn't call for the sugar. I just like to add it. And I feel like she did add it, it's just one of those things that didn't get written down as the years went on. So, this is just gonna sit now, back in the refrigerator, and then I'm gonna check on the gravy one more time and get the meatballs out of the oven, and then we'll check on our dough and see if it's ready to roll. So as you can see, we reset the kitchen to actually stop and make our ravioli. We have the KitchenAid Mixmaster, so I use the pasta attachment for this, which makes it super easy. If you don't have this at home, there's a crank machine, and if you don't have that, you can actually roll it by hand, which will take you forever, but hey, why not try it? It'll be fun for the kids. So now our dough's been resting for probably about an hour. I let this dough rest a little bit further because truthfully it wasn't coming the way I wanted it to. And then I added a little bit of olive oil to it just to get it into this ball here. So now what I'm gonna do is just slice a little bit of it off. Still not great, that's okay. We're gonna work with it. We're gonna stick it back in here. And I have a damp cloth on there to try to keep it from drying out, and I keep covering it up. So now I'm just gonna do this. Sometimes I sprinkle light flour. Right now I don't want the flour. I don't want to dry this out any more than it already is. And I'm just gonna roll it. And then I'm gonna turn on my pasta machine. And so this has different settings on it. We're gonna roll this on 1. I'm just on a low speed. Stick a little bit of flour in here so it doesn't stick. I'm just gonna push this through. And let that come out and catch it. Now, this is rolling a little bit more grainy than I'd like, so I'm gonna fold it over, but I am gonna move it to 2. For ravioli, you generally roll to a 3 or a 4, usually a 4, sometimes a 5, depending on the thickness of your dough. You don't want it to be too thin, but you also don't want it to be too thick. And we're gonna, so that was a 2, now we're gonna go to a 3. And sometimes I just roll the corners over, because it keeps it, now I'm catching the right way. So you can see it's finally coming. So sometimes even though you might think your dough's not working, it can actually be the best dough that you have. And this is still a little thick for ravioli, so I'm gonna go to the 4. You don't wanna push it through, you just want the machine to take the dough itself. You can see it coming out. It's actually, this is rolling really, really nicely. So even though it's a little bit drier than I would normally like it, it's doing what I want it to do. And then we're gonna come over here to our ravioli thing. And so sometimes it'll make a full sheet, so this will, and now we have to roll a top for it. So I'm gonna turn this off for a second so I can show you our next steps here. I'm just gonna actually lay that right there. You never wanna leave dough sitting out too long because it can dry out. So with this, we're actually gonna stuff it about a teaspoonful. Now, if you don't have the little tray like I do, you can, like I said, do this by hand, and you probably use about the same amount. And if you don't wanna make your own dough, you can actually use wontons, like the store-bought ones, and make ravioli with those. It's just a little bit of a quick way if you just wanna do that one night. We're just gonna keep doing this. This is why you want the stations. So like I said, if you've got kids or your husband, grandparents at home, everybody can be doing a different thing. It's kind of a fun Sunday or Saturday activity. And then, you know, I don't know, it's just a good time. And then you get to all eat dinner together if you're working. Now I do have a little bit of an egg wash here and some water. So what I do, depending on the dough, I'm gonna use the water on this one, is just go around the sides of it. What this does is when I put the topper on, it's gonna seal it. And you're gonna go down the middle So you want to seal each piece of the dough. Now we're going to add the topper. Just like that. Oh, perfect. And now you're going to take your rolling pin. All these steps, it's so fun though. And you're just going to roll across it. You want to make sure it's in there and sealed really good, especially on those ends. And then we're going to flip it over. Now we never want to waste good dough, so I generally just cut this part off. And I put it back in, because that's either going to be pasta or some more ravioli later. And you take this off, and you're going to take your little ravioli tool. You must have one of these, they're the best things ever. And you're just going to slice around. And this just helps pinch it and seal it. There you go. I mean, if you have a guy in the end like I do that just needs a little extra sealing, you just kind of give it to him. And then just to separate them, you just go like that. And across. And voila, ravioli.
Hey Mambo, Mambo Italiano, hey Mambo, Mambo Italiano, go, go, go. You mix up Siciliano or you calibrate to do the mambo like a crazy with the hey Mambo. No more mozzarella, hey Mambo, Mambo Italiana, try an enchilada with a fishy bacala.
So before you freeze them, you just want to poke the raviolis in the center with a toothpick, just a little poke. What this does is it stops them from exploding when you boil them in the water and lets the air filter through. Now that our gravy is simmering on low and been strained, we are going to move over here to where our ravioli water is boiling. Now with this, there's only Mark and I for dinner tonight, so we're not making a ton of ravioli, we're just making 6 of them. But if you have a bigger family, you're going to use a bigger pot of water. What you don't want is the raviolis to stick together. So you're going to gently place them in, and they should feel like little puff clouds. And when they come to the top, they're pretty much done. You might want to give them 1 or 2 more minutes. You got to be a little bit gentle with these guys because they are just, you know, fresh dough. I keep them in the freezer for chill them, and then I take them out and I bag them. So these, because we made them today, we just froze for a little bit and took them out. So we're just gonna let those cook for just a few more minutes, and then we're gonna plate them up. And the raviolis are finally done. So what I like to do, oops, sorry about that, is put a little bit of gravy on the dish. Strain the raviolis. Now, if you have a family of 4 or you're making more raviolis, you're gonna probably want to strain them in over the sink. But for us tonight, because there's just 2 of us, I can do it this way. Little gravy on top. Some Parmesan, of course. A little bit of fresh basil. Mangia.